Well, hello and welcome to this first episode of the Rexdale Alliance Live Called in the Marketplace podcast for 2024. And I'm joined today by Reverend Amanda Corbin, who is the Director of Missions, Mobilization and New Ventures for the Eastern Canada District of the Alliance Canada.
That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. I was thinking the same thing. Yes.
It's hard to write on little business cards.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. So why don't we start with that? Tell us a little bit about what it is that you actually do with that mouthful of a title at the Alliance, and how did you get there?
Awesome. Well, going back a few years, I've been in the Alliance for almost 17 years now.
Wow.
And started off as a children's pastor out in BC.
Okay.
And then when my husband and I got married, we moved to Alberta, just outside of Edmonton, and we took over an Alliance church camp, an Alliance camp. Okay. So while he was the director of the camp there, I got a part-time position at the Alliance church there as the director of family ministries. And then after we welcomed our 3 kids there, we went to even further north, if you can believe it. We went 5 hours north of Edmonton, and we made Beaver Lodge, Alberta, our home for about 5 years.
Wow.
5.5 years. My husband served there as the youth pastor and the associate at the Beaver Lodge Alliance Church. And we welcomed one more child. And so by this time, 4 kids. I couldn't really, leave my house looking in any sort of way presentable. So I decided not to work for a little while. And then we really felt God calling us to step out of our comfort zone and move back to Ontario. I grew up here in Ontario, so it felt almost like a homecoming. But we followed his call, and we were given words, some prophetic words of that really motivated us, but also intimidated us a little bit, knowing that we were coming to a place that, God was calling us to, and we needed to be obedient to that calling. So we moved here, and my husband was a lead pastor in Oshawa at an Alliance church for a while, and for about 5 years. And then we, again, felt God's call, and he stepped into a role at the National Ministry Center, while I stepped into a role at the district office. So as our kids have been growing and started school, I realized, there is still a really strong calling on my life, not only to be a devoted follower of Jesus and share that with my neighbors, but there's a piece of, I need to work. I need to do something with this calling. And so not really understanding what that was, I decided to start by volunteering at the district office. And that's what I did. So I'd spend one day every week or every other week just actually going to the office and, stuffing envelopes, doing some file sorting. I would make phone calls to pastors and ask them to complete their LCAR so that, national office had all the information. So I did some of the grunt work, and then when our new DS started, he saw some potential and invited me into a position there as missions mobilizer. So that's where I started. And funny story is I started this contract work as missions mobilizer the week that COVID shut down the world.
Oh boy.
So here I am trying to get to know people for, 5 days and launch into this new position. And then everybody's like, no, we don't want to talk to you. So that, it gave me opportunity to actually learn a lot, do a lot of research about the history of the Alliance, especially the missional history of the Alliance, because we are a denomination that is rooted in deeper life and mission.
Yes.
And so it gave me opportunity to really dive into what that looked like. And in order to dive into missions, believe it or not, you have to dive into the deeper life. Because out of pursuing Jesus and out of hearing his voice, out of that deep connection with your Father, you will be called into more. Yes. And so the deeper life actually propels you into missions. So it was great to be able to spend that time during the first about 8 months of my position as the missions mobilizer to really get rooted and established and learn about missions in our Alliance history. And from there, my portfolio has grown to include, the missions mobilization and new ventures. And somewhere along the way, I also took on the role of communications as well.
Okay.
But I don't really tend to advertise that because it's just one of those extra kind of things that I do.
Right.
You know? But I love that part because I get to share the stories. And the thing is part of my job as the mobilizer and for new ventures is sharing the stories. And so it felt natural that that's part of the communications piece, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
So missions mobilization, a lot of people are like, what does that actually mean? Yes. So to put it simply is I connect with our international workers and I connect with our churches and talk to them about missions, which is why I'm here with you today.
Yes, indeed.
I help our international workers stay connected with our churches, and I help our churches stay connected with our international workers. And that looks different for every church. We have over 80 churches in our district, and we have just over 50 international workers. And all of our international workers are connected with their sending church, their home church, and probably another handful of churches as well. And so we hope that all of our churches are engaged in missions in one way or another, whether it's supporting international workers or it's being missional locally, or they're connected with another type of missional organization where they are reaching the least reached peoples. So my job as missions mobilizer is to stay in touch with all of our international workers, especially when they're home. I help them get sorted out, help them connect with pastors and churches. But when they're back on their fields, I do stay connected with them, just so that I know the stories so that I can go and share and keep churches informed. So that's the missions mobilization part. The new ventures part, let me just touch on this briefly. I know it's not like highlighted here in our conversation, but you'd be surprised at how much missions and new ventures actually overlap. New ventures is all about new churches, new spaces, new places. Here locally. And we know that the nations of the world have come here to Canada. And if we are passionate about reaching the world for Jesus, the best place to start is by sitting on your front step and talking to your neighbor. Because if you can have a conversation with your neighbor, then you're probably going to be able to have a conversation with anybody in the world. So that's the best place to start. And New Ventures is all about those new spaces where God is at work. So if you were to think of even your neighborhood here, like where are the connections, where are the people and the conversations that you are having where you have seen Holy Spirit at work? And where do you feel God might be asking you to dive in, to have deeper conversations, maybe invite people over to your house? Who knows how that will grow and develop into spiritual conversations? And so New Ventures is about creating spaces and people, leaders, and developing leaders to, start a church or start a community of believers. What could that look like? And often it does not look like your traditional church. It looks like having church around your table. It looks like online church through Twitch platforms, using gaming as a way of reaching your neighbors and reaching those, which blows my mind because it transcends space and time because it's online. So anywhere anybody can join in and hear about Jesus. It could look like there's just so many opportunities. How could it look? There's Spanish communities that are started. There are Filipino New Ventures that are started. There's churches that meet midway through the week at welcome centers in their town because there's no other available space. But they're having incredible conversations with people at the grocery store who are just longing to hear about Jesus. So it's being missional in your own community. And so I often challenge churches when I'm speaking about where are the places that God is using you. It could be in your job. It could just be in your community, in your neighborhood, where you could potentially see the development of a community, being the dwelling place of God. or being a dwelling place where God wants to be,
yes.
In order to reach the nations and reach people for Jesus.
Yeah.
So I like to think of new ventures as being locally missional.
Yes.
So the two pieces of my job is missions globally and missions locally.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about what I do.
That's amazing. I mean, there's so many things that so many jumping off points that we could take from there, but we are here to talk about this idea of marketplace. And I think, just from what you've shared already, those two portfolios really almost marry the idea of marketplace in so many ways. So I guess the question is, what do we mean when we say marketplace in the context of what the Alliance is talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Marketplace is very specific to taking your career, your job, and infusing that with your belief and your everyday meeting with Jesus and going about your job every day with Jesus. Marketplace is using your career, using your giftings, using your calling as a place of worship every day. So whether you are a physician or a pediatrician, you are a librarian, you are a custodian at a school, you're a teacher, it's taking your profession and making the most of every opportunity to share the light, to be the salt and the light, to invite Jesus into the spaces, into the conversations. It's living out your faith. It's living out your faith.
That's exactly
in
what I was
everything,
just thinking.
in everything you do.
Yeah.
So it's even while you're driving, instead of getting aggravated and cutting people off, you can drive knowing Jesus is sitting in the seat beside you. I know it's corny, but it's true. It's how do you have the attitude and the Christ-likeness in you? How are you displaying that no matter where you are?
Yeah.
So marketplace specifically is using your everyday job as worship. Does that give a clear sort of definition?
Yes.
Yeah.
So now this isn't a new idea. I mean, this has been probably merely since the church began, but it's a bit of a new area of focus, new-ish area of focus for the Alliance Canada. So maybe you can tell us a bit about why and how that's come about.
Yeah, for sure. There's the pathway of becoming an international worker that you get funding for through the Global Advance Fund, which thank you for giving.
Yes. The sort of traditional missionary.
Yeah, the traditional way of going. And then there's the marketplace pathway, which allows people to use their careers. So we're seeing a lot of people who are in their middle years, the 50s, 60s, that want to use their careers for Jesus. And so they're thinking, how can I do this in a way that I can still use my career? And the best way to do that is to find a job overseas and partner you up with a team that's already there locally serving so that you can use your career for Jesus. And I think one of the reasons why the Alliance is going towards this way is because more and more we're seeing there's a lot of countries in this world where there are so many least reached people groups. There's still currently over 7,000 least reached people groups in this world. Just when we think we're getting a little bit, there's another one, And so, and in a lot of these countries, unless you come with a career or a profession that benefits the economy, you are not going to get access into that country. And so we're finding that the best way to get access into some of these countries is by offering our professions, by being a doctor, by being a teacher, by being whatever is needed in that culture, so that it opens up opportunities for you to come and to work there, to grow their economy, but to also, covertly share the love of Jesus in all that you do. So that's why we're choosing this pathway and emphasizing it, because there are a lot of people that are in their second career or second stage of life, if you will, that want to take what they already have and use it for God's goodness and His glory. Yeah.
now you've given some examples already of the kinds of jobs that a person might find overseas. And is there, like, would you say there's any kind of job that wouldn't work for this kind of a thing? Or
I mean, when you think about it, every job that we have here in Canada, it must be a job elsewhere in the world, right?
Yes.
Everything from collecting garbage to being a blogger even. You can do that anywhere in the world, right? Or, working at... I guess we don't do a lot of newspapers nowadays, but I'm thinking like all of the everyday practical jobs that you have, owning and running a restaurant, being a teacher, being a physician or a doctor of any sort will get you a position anywhere in this world. We know that. Being in government can get you a position. Now, for some countries, you have to actually be, a citizen, a resident.
Yes.
But there are so many opportunities for every kind of job.
So it really could be any vocation.
It could be any vocation.
Yeah, you don't have to be a professional something.
No,
it could be any vocation.
And more in this world, we're finding, especially since COVID, you can do a lot of jobs from home.
True.
And so we're finding that there are a lot of like computer analysis type people, computer tech people, a lot of social networking kind of jobs that you can take on the road. You can go anywhere in this world and do those jobs. Yeah. And so why not do it from Indonesia? Well, in your evenings, you go and you participate in Bible studies and starting church groups or rescuing women off the streets, why not do that? Yeah. So because if you can dream it, we can make it happen. Basically. And I know that, again, sounds kind of cheesy, but there's the possibilities are endless when you think about it, especially when you give yourself the space to dream outside of your own reality. Yeah. Because when you can think, okay, I'm passionate about playing the piano. How could I use this for the glory of God in Japan? Okay, well, let's think of the possibilities. You could be a piano teacher. You could be a theory teacher. You could be a music teacher at a local school. You could be a teacher at an international school there. So you don't necessarily even have to learn the language because it would be an English-speaking school. Right. So there's so many opportunities if you give yourself permission to dream and think outside the box. Yeah.
Now, I want to touch back on something that you mentioned earlier, though, about the deeper life and that, it's not that you're going to go over to, say, Japan and you'll suddenly become this amazing evangelist that is just, sort of living out their life of faith and everybody wants to know Jesus because of you. It's rooted in the faith that you already have here. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yes, I can. This is sort of my sweet spot. I love talking to people about the deeper life. I think, like I said, in order for us to pursue missions, to know the heart of God, which is to love others, to bring others into relationship with Him, to be on mission, to bring His presence into this world. The more we engage with Him in our own life, the more we intimately seek Him and know Him and listen to His voice, the more we will be able to live out that calling. Yeah. And so it is very much rooted in your relationship with Jesus. You can't just one day decide, I'm going to change the world, but not have a relationship with Jesus. Right. I often tell kids or youth when they are wanting to be a witness in their school, and I say, unless you have an established relationship with Jesus, how are you going to tell others about Jesus? how are you going to share the word, the Bible, if you don't read the Bible? Or the stories in the life of Jesus if you yourself don't know them first? And so, I mean, not just youth, all of us need to know that, right? Yeah. Much like nobody's going to ask me to go and teach a course on astrophysics because I don't know anything about that. But somebody might ask me to teach on mission or about the heart of Jesus because I have met with Jesus and I know his voice and I know his will and I know his calling and I've studied his word and I've followed him. And so it's out of the experience and out of the encounters that we have with Jesus, out of listening to his voice. And that doesn't just happen overnight.
No.
It takes time and it takes growing through the storms of life. Yeah. It takes expanding your horizons. It takes open hands and open hearts. Yeah. It takes a posture of curiosity and wonder, and an obedience to whatever God's calling you to do, but being rooted and established in his love, in that obedience, in his presence, and encountering that day in and day out. It not only empowers you for future ministry, but it also gives you a stronger calling. And you have, you see the Father's heart for his people, not just the brokenness of this world through Jesus's eyes, but you also know that God's will is for all people, all nations, to know him and to love him. And so the deeper in life, the deeper in life is what propels us forward into mission.
And I think a lot of us think of evangelism as really talking about our faith, but I think I'm hearing like it's not just what we say; it's how we live our lives, and just that everyday being in communication with Jesus. And didn't Jesus? That's what he prayed for his disciples in John 17, that we would be known by our love for each other. So just how we live. And so, I mean, I'm thinking about the story that you told me a few minutes ago. And so and we would love to hear some examples of what this might look like. So maybe you can share some of those those people that you've kind of worked with that have done this kind of thing.
Well, let me share that story I was telling you about. So this middle-aged man was had just retired, wanted to take a stab at missions life. He wanted to live overseas, and so he decided to do a 2-year term to a village in Indonesia. He knew it would be tough. He knew he would have to learn a new language. He knew that I think one part of the story is that he really loved the food, and so that was the motivating factor on the checklist of where in the world do I want to live? It's the like food. Where's the best food?
As good a reason as any. Sure.
I'm sure beaches were up there too. You know. And so he decided to go and live in this village for 2 years. He decided to try his hardest at learning the language, at adapting to the culture, getting as involved as possible. And after 2 years, he came home and he told the organization that sent him, like, it was actually really frustrating. I struggled getting to know the language. I struggled getting to know the culture. I don't know if I did a really good job, so please don't send me back. And so the organization cared for him well and said, okay, we won't send you back. But they decided to send a younger couple to the fields, to that same village, to see if maybe a younger couple could have a stronger impact or learn the language and the culture easier. So the younger couple was there and they dove right in. They got to know the language, the people. It was really easy for them to adjust. Okay. And within about 6 months, doors had opened for them to talk about Jesus and to like sit down and have community with others in the village and to share who Jesus was, to study the Bible and to tell people exactly who the character of Jesus was. And as they're telling the community about Jesus, the elders in this community said, "Oh, we already know who Jesus is." And this young couple's like, oh, then why are we here trying to witness to these people? And the elder said, he lived with us for 2 years. We know exactly who he is. And it just blows my mind that you could think you have no impact in the world. You have no clue how your everyday presence is Jesus.
Yes. Yep.
If you just go and be Jesus.
Yes. Yes.
It doesn't require a big building and the seats filled to capacity. It just requires you being obedient and faithful to being the presence of Jesus everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And you might not, this side of heaven, know the impact that you are having in this world, but trust me, you are having an impact.
Yes.
Out of your encounters of Jesus, with Jesus, others will see him and know him.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the foundation. I love that story. Yeah. It's so encouraging because I think, a lot of us, as we're kind of going about our day-to-day work life, we think, what difference am I making? Yeah. And, but yet if we are pursuing that deeper life with Jesus, and that's pushing us to live as a called person, whatever that looks like, God will do with it what only He can do. Yeah. Yeah. And so we just have to trust that He will do that.
100%.
So I love that story. Yeah. I'm sure you have lots of other stories. We'd love to hear some other examples of folks that you know that have taken their career somewhere else in the world and sort of done this thing.
Yeah, so we have an international working couple in our denomination who have gone over to the Middle East. She is a physiotherapist, and he is I think he's like a sports coach and physiotherapist type person. And they together found jobs overseas, and she works in the hospital and he works I think in conjunction with the hospital, but also in conjunction with colleges and sports teams and things like that. And so he offers his services to help do the physio training and stuff like that. And so these two individuals, they serve and work at this hospital part-time. And the other piece of their living, the other time, I mean, they do have children as well that they manage and care for.
Right, so they're parenting too.
And parent, yes, not just manage, they care for them. But they're intentionally involved in the community. They are partnered up with other international workers, both with the Alliance and with other organizations. We love to network when we're overseas. And they do church plants, they do Bible studies. My friend, the physiotherapist at the hospital, she decided to join a pickleball team. Oh, boy. Because it's a way of getting to know the culture and the way they play pickleball and the uniforms they wear and everything. And they were a part of a tournament. And so they had to drive for 3 hours one way for this tournament. And she had incredible conversations with them in the car, because they're asking, why did you move from Canada to come and do this here? Like, of all places. Yeah. Like, you probably had a cushy house, like a really nice life there, and you came here? And she said, because I love Jesus and He called me here and I want to share His love with others. I mean, she said it maybe in different words, but very much that posture of, I was comfortable, but God's called me out of my comfort zone to do something for the kingdom. Yep. We have another couple. She's a school teacher. He's a computer tech programmer for a worldwide company. So he can do his job anywhere in the world. And she is a teacher at a local school. Again, the school that she's teaching at is English. So while she does still need to learn a new language, for the most part, their adaptive abilities into that culture were relatively easy because she was working in an predominantly English job, which makes the transition a lot easier, especially for kids too, right? So she was using her teaching ability while he stayed at home, working from home, doing his computer tech. And then after hours, all their kids are involved in different sports. They joined up with the local Alliance team. and they're reaching into the community and witnessing to all of these people all the time. And so they're using their profession. They have jobs that they get paid to do overseas, and then their evenings, much like how we do our evenings here, right? We get they are invested in their community, and they're building churches and making headway for Jesus to move.
Wow.
So it's amazing how the opportunities just continue to open up, especially when people are. We have a couple right now that I believe he's a welder and she's a stay-at-home mom. Yeah. And they just really feel called to Africa, and they have since they were really little, this young married couple. And so he's partnered up with I don't know what the company's called overseas, but they do a whole lot of building wells in African villages. Okay. It's this world company, but he wants to go. This couple wants to go through the marketplace pathway, and so through the Alliance, because they are Alliance, they grew up Alliance. And he's getting a job working as a welder to help build wells in African villages. And she is a stay-at-home mom. They have a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old, and she wants to homeschool them. So they're going to do that on the road, and that's what they're going to do. And
I was actually just thinking about that as you were talking about the computer programmer who was staying at home, presumably, being the kind of stay-at-home parent as well as doing his job. And I was thinking, as a couple, that would be an opportunity. If you have a parent that is staying at home, I think there's still lots of opportunity to engage in community. When you have kids, especially, there's such a natural connection point with people, and a natural way for engaging, opportunities for hospitality, all of those kinds of things. So if your career is a stay-at-home parent, it's still an opportunity.
You can stay home anywhere in the world.
You can stay home anywhere in the world, exactly. So now if somebody was interested in doing this, in sort of taking their job from here and going over there, like, how do you start that kind of process? What does that look like?
I think first and foremost, to bring it back to a previous point, the deeper life. You start with asking Jesus.
You're not just making this out of I think that's a good idea today.
I like that food in those beaches. No. It's dependent upon where God's called you. If he's called you to your own backyard, or if he's called you overseas. And so I think that is the very first thing, is listening prayer and getting people on board with you to listen for you and with you and discern with you. We never want to pursue anything in this world without community. God made us to be in community, right? And so I would encourage whoever might be interested in this sort of pathway to form a community of people who are listening alongside you and discerning with you. I think that's first and foremost number one.
And those people are going to be also supporting you while you are 100%. If you end up going to the other side of the world. And you need that.
So that would be number one thing. The second thing is to discern if it's your profession and how that profession could look. So again, this is opportunity to dream. Just because you are a pediatrician doesn't mean you need to start your own practice, or you need to work at a hospital. It could look like maybe you're a pediatrician and you want to work out of your house, or you're a pediatrician that wants to start a new facility in a community. So you need to work with the government. Like add that dreaming piece, add that curiosity piece and that wonder piece as you are praying as well, because you just never know. I often say, and this is where the New Ventures world comes in too, I often say to a new venture leader, where is God at work and how are you partnering with them? Because you don't necessarily need to go somewhere and ask God to start working, because God is already working everywhere in this world. So it is figuring out, where is he at work, what is he doing, and how is he calling me to partner with him. And so a lot of our a lot of people who are in the marketplace pathway, and sometimes this is a quick pathway. Like sometimes it's like 6 months and you're there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 2 or 3 years. And so we want to make sure that you do a field visit. That's the most important piece.
Interesting.
Is go and check it out. And if that is, a really great opportunity, like obviously it's a great opportunity, but as you are going and checking things out, maybe there's an interview that you could set up to have, or tour, if you're a nurse, tour a couple hospitals,
right.
Or if you're a teacher, go in and look and meet principals and schools and districts and things like that. If you are a nurse, again, go and tour, did I ever say nurse?
You did.
Go and tour hospitals. Or learn about the different communities that you want to be involved in. The different services, public services or government services or help services or the different universities. We have some marketplace workers that are social workers that are partnered up with the universities to help the international students integrate better. That's a great way of using your social work skills in helping cross-culturally, so many other people cross-culturally, right? Yes. Adapting. So there's that piece of the marketplace pathway. You want to take a vision trip, or ask others, get connected with others that are there, that are on the field, that are using their career as a launching point to tell people about Jesus. So first, I would say, open hearts, open hands, listen to Jesus. What is your calling? The obedience piece. The second is go and see the field. Go and experience what it would be like. Because you don't want to sign up for 2 years for a job somewhere that you've never been, in a culture you've never experienced. Even if you only experience it for 2 or 3 days, at least you have something, right?
Yes.
So that would be the next part. I think after that would be connecting with the global ministries, of connecting with myself, or connecting with Suresh, who actually attends Rexdale. And he is the marketplace rep from the global ministries from our denomination. So he would be happy to have a conversation and point you in great directions. Alongside Suresh and myself, we partner you up with we connect you to different ways of finding a job. So you might be like, okay, I'm a doctor, but I don't know what the hospitals are, where they are. Where could I actually use my job? I'm a school teacher. I don't know where I can use my job. I'm a pharmacist. Where can I use my job overseas? And so we partner you up. We give you resources to be able to find a job. We help you interview. We could maybe walk alongside you through the interview process if you want. We keep you connected with your churches. So there's 3 main pieces with when we send people on the marketplace pathway. 3 main things as the Alliance that we look to do. We look to care for you. We want to always offer you care, offer you that member care support. We want to care for your soul as much as we possibly can. We want to keep you connected, not just to your sending church, but also to the broader Alliance body. So by keeping you connected, we'll invite you to field forums to be a part with all our other international workers. We'll include you as an international worker on our website. It's not like a completely different, it is 2 different pathways, but we incorporate you as an international worker. And the other, so we have care, we care for you, we connect you, and we help you communicate. Right. Yes.
There's 3 C's.
Yes, there's 3 C's. Communicate, because it's important that you communicate with your sending church. It's important that you communicate back to GM, Global Ministries, how things are going. So we stay in touch. And that's part of my job as missions mobilizer, is to stay in touch with you. We have check-in points. We have conversations. And I love that we have tech like Zoom. So anywhere in the world, we can find a time, my morning, your night, or vice versa, and we can have a conversation. And I think that's the beautiful part of our world now is that even though we are separated by miles, we are never very far.
Right.
So communication is another key component as we walk with you on the marketplace pathway.
And I think that's so important and so helpful to know that, I think there have been a lot of people over probably centuries who have gone to a country that is not their homeland for whatever reason, and they've kind of been on their own, and they've been unsupported, and sometimes they'll find a new community and they'll thrive, but transition can be really hard.
It can be.
And so it's really helpful to know that there is this possibility for support and connection, and it doesn't take away from the connections that you already have with your friends and family here, but just that it's another layer of help. To help ease that transition, and probably also to normalize some of the struggles that people have, I would imagine.
So, yeah.
So I think we have a pretty good idea of what we mean by marketplace pathway. And I guess people might be asking, like, what is the difference? What distinguishes somebody who goes the marketplace pathway, takes their job somewhere else in the world, and is in that pathway versus somebody who just moves to another part of the world and is working?
That's a good question. And I think it actually points back to those 3 C's again. Because you are on a pathway and you're not just doing this on your own, which if God's called you to go and do this all by yourself, more power to you.
Right. Yeah.
I know I personally thrive when I'm connected with community.
Yeah.
And I truly, truly believe that that's how God's created us for community. So that's why this pathway encourages the connection.
Yeah.
So while you could just willy-nilly go on your own, move to a different country, do whatever you want, but is that going to, in the long run, are you going to feel well cared for and supported? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But through this pathway, we offer that kind of support. We offer the care up front. So if you are struggling emotionally, we will offer you some care. We want to make sure we're caring for you as an individual, not you as a school teacher somewhere off, down the road. We want to care for you and make sure your soul is well cared for. So we do a lot of workshops and things like that that help you feel loved and supported that way. And we welcome you into the family. Now, you could, if you wanted to, in the marketplace pathway, if you want to, you can become licensed with the Alliance. If you are, when you are on the field, if you're connected and entrenched in the Alliance work. Now, some of our marketplace workers are not licensed with the Alliance, but we still welcome them in and we still embrace them and walk with them through and invite them to the different field forums, invite them to the area team gatherings and things like that, because they are a part of us, right? They're being sent out as a branch of an Alliance church. The benefit of being sent on marketplace through the Alliance is the care that we offer, the connections that we offer as well, and the communication piece that we help you with. And so that's why I would suggest walking through with in the community, in your community, helping support you and launch you. And that's what I would suggest is the best.
Very helpful. So now we've touched on a lot of different things. Is there one piece of advice that you would give somebody if they're considering something like this?
I think it's the same kind of advice that I give to new leaders that are considering starting a new venture. Open hands and open heart. It's about a posture. It's not about doing. We can do all we want. But unless our attitudes and our posture is one of openness to what God wants us to do, so we're striving to accomplish His will, not our own. with that perspective, and you are able to discern and decipher what his will is for your life. And so I think the one piece of advice, is open hands, open heart, listen to his voice. And I'd love to have a conversation with you, anybody that's interested in what this could possibly look like. And just because I love telling little stories. Yes. So I was speaking at a local church here, an Alliance church. And I was just talking about missions. And actually, I think it was Ascending Sunday. We were signing a seamless link for a couple that was going back overseas. And after the service, so the message I gave was, you are blessed to be a blessing. So go and be a blessing. So that was my message. And so out of that, a young couple came up to me and said, it has been just on our hearts the last 2 weeks, not even long, 2 weeks, that God has prompted us that we need to use our jobs to be missionaries. How can we do that? I didn't even talk about the marketplace pathway. Didn't even come up. But they were feeling so called to using their jobs in this world, their professions in this world. And I said, let's have a conversation. This is great. And they're fully equipped. They are ready to hit the ground running. So much so that during our 2 weeks later, when we had a phone call, they're like, oh yeah, so in these 2 weeks, we've researched and we've booked a trip. We're going to go to this place in the Middle East, and we're going to explore these people, this position, and we've lined up an interview when we're there, and we're going to do all these things. I'm like, wow, you guys are super serious. And so that, my support to them was minimal, because they were go-get-em kind of people. And they already had deciphered the call of God on their lives. But I got to have a conversation with them, and I got to walk with them. And even right now, they are now in the process, talking with Suresh. They're on almost the final stages of heading over to start their careers, but new careers in a new culture, in a new place. And they are so passionate about being able to share Jesus outside of their tiny bubble that they've always known. And they're really young, and they're eager, and they're already connected with the team that's already there. And they're connected with other international workers too. And their church is so excited to send them. So again, those 3 C's, the caring, the communication, and the connection piece are already in place there. And so that's just a little encouraging story that it can happen super quick, or you can take your time. It could be a 2-year time frame, or 5 years. I don't know. Maybe you're, just starting college and pursuing a career in, mathematics, and you want to go over and use that somewhere, and maybe it's down the road. So it doesn't matter. Let's have a conversation about it, and let's talk about what it means to be on mission, not just right now, and not just right here, but elsewhere in this world. What could that look like?
This has been wonderful, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining me and helping us to understand what this marketplace pathway is.